Born in Indiana, figure and landscape painter Daniel Garber studied at the Cincinnati Art Academy and shortly thereafter at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts. As early as 1902, Garber was recognized as a rising young talent with a likable style, and his work was viewed by the public in every imaginable exhibition across America. Awarded the Crescent Traveling Fellowship, he spent 2 years in England, Italy, and France. While in Paris, Garber seemed to be little affected by the avant-garde movements of the time and continued to develop his own impressionist style of painting. Though intending to stay for another year in Europe, Garber was inspired to return to America by an invitation to teach at the Philadelphia School of Design for Women, and more importantly, by learning that his father-in-law had purchased a piece of land in Bucks County. Upon his return, he was settled into a new home along the Cuddalassa Creek near Lumberville, where he cultivated both the property and his own distinctive vision as an artist. Garber achieved remarkable success as a landscape painter, draftsman, and teacher, a career he pursued at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts for 41 years. In 1926, he was awarded a commission to produce a huge mural for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania's sesquicentennial celebration, a wooded landscape for the Natural Resources exhibition. The Sesquicentennial Project of 1926, originally proposed by John Wanamaker, was intended to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the nation 10 years away. A giant replica of the Liberty Bell formed the gateway to the site, and over 800 floodlights of varied colors beamed on City Hall. Daniel Garber's mural was installed in the Pennsylvania Building, one of the most expensive state buildings, which cost $750,000 and was designed by Ralph Banker. However, the sesquicentennial failed to live up to expectations. Poor management, bad weather, and political corruption caused its failure. Garber's mural, owned by the Commonwealth, was removed and subsequently installed under his direction in an auditorium at what was then the State Forest School at Mont Alto, near Gettysburg. Over the years, the mural was not so much lost as lost track of. In June 1992, Pulitzer Prize-winning author James A. Michener presented a unique program to the Regional Art Museum named for him in Doylestown, Bucks County, Pennsylvania. The James A. Michener Art Museum, which was celebrating groundbreaking for a major expansion, was challenged to secure the gift or bequest of at least 40 museum-quality works by Bucks County artists. Marjorie Bluebow, a librarian at the Mont Alto campus of Pennsylvania State University, had read a newspaper article describing the challenge, which mentioned some of the best-known of these painters and sculptors. Among them, she recognized Daniel Garber, the artist who had done the large painting familiar to her.
The director of the museum, Bruce, was really excited because he had no idea that there was such a large Garber painting that he hadn't even heard about. Mr. Garber had to paint part of it from a stepladder because he could not reach it, obviously, in his warehouse where he painted it in Lumberville, Bucks County. And then it was taken to Philadelphia to the sesquicentennial celebration in 1926. At the end of the sesquicentennial celebration, at the end of 1926, it had to find another home, naturally. And the fact that this campus was a forestry school owned and operated by the Pennsylvania Department of Forests, and this building that it was brought to was brand new at the time. It was just being finished. The dedication was in March of 1927. And so the painting was given to the school because it was part of the department.
Marjorie's been a terrific asset to the campus all along. She's kept track of all of our history. She knows all our founders by name. She can pick out their pictures from when they were 18 and 83. And so when she told me that this was a valuable painting, she'd found something out about it, I suspected she was right. And then when we actually phoned Bruce and found out what we actually had and began working with the museum, it was a pretty serendipitous and happy event. And it was, to some extent, serendipitous. Although, as it turns out, we have some people on our advisory board who are familiar with Garber, but they didn't know it was here.
Bruce Gatzev, the director of the museum, traveled to Mont Alto with Garber's granddaughter, Dana Appelstein, and Carolyn Smith, president of the museum's board of trustees. Walking into the auditorium, they could see somewhere in the back of the stage a large, dingy object and set to work to get some light on it. In that instant, they knew that the picture was a substantial piece of art that still had the life and energy that Garber had originally painted into it.
The project is certainly the biggest art restoration project that the institution has done, and the significance is that the project really speaks to the heart and soul of the museum's work. The museum really isn't about building buildings. The museum isn't about raising money. The museum isn't about so many of the other things that we do that are essential, but they're really not the heart of the institution. The heart of the institution is to preserve and care for the county's artistic heritage. And the care and restoration and eventual exhibition of this painting is the most powerful symbol of that. Here was this opportunity for the museum to reach back to 1926, reach back to the sesquicentennial, and to act in a way to preserve and care and present a work of art. And in that way, it really kind of firmly established and built a link between the museum and so many of the artists that had come before.
From the very beginning, the year-long process of removing the mural from Mont Alto, warehousing and conserving it, moving it into the museum, storing it there, and finally installing it permanently took enormous planning that involved finding the right team to handle the job. Judy Heyman, associate director of the museum, with the help of expert conservators, oversaw every aspect of the process. No documentation existed from its installation at the campus under Garber's supervision in 1927. It was mounted in a way that was totally unknown. Spikes went through the front of the painting, the stretcher and spacer blocks, and into the wall to mount the mural. There were also bolts in all four corners, and an additional 2 bolts which were evenly spaced across the top edge. The original dimensions of the painting, as given in early descriptions, indicated that it was wider than the 20 feet that was visible. Had it been folded back or cut down to fit into the auditorium stage area?
It was installed in a very secure way. It wasn't a way that you would recommend now. You would never put 9-inch spikes right through a canvas and through a stretcher and into a wall, but at least we didn't have to be concerned that the hanging gear was going to let go during the installation.
Every nuance of the project was meticulously documented to preserve an archival record. Conservators Barbara A. Buckley and Mark Bockrath had done significant assessments of the canvas in earlier visits and had determined that cleaning the surface grime would require the greatest amount of labor.
Considering it was used as a backdrop for a stage in an auditorium, in a school setting, in an unprotected setting, it was in fairly good condition, better than you would expect. And I think that says a lot about the staff of Mont Alto. They had made a great effort to try and preserve the work once they realized the significance of it.
Balancing and counterbalancing the sizable canvas, the art handlers tried to anticipate the impact of the weight of the work once it was loosened from the wall. Nailed moldings covered the vertical edges of the painting, making it impossible to determine whether it had extra fabric with painted designs folded around the stretcher. Every precaution was taken to minimize further trauma to the work, as the huge bolts and molding were removed in order to lower it.
Okay, now we're okay with the sound and everything.
Okay, I'm plugging this in.
What about the molding at the bottom?
It looks like we're going to be okay. We'll see.
De-installation continued in phases, with much discussion in between, as each part of the process revealed another aspect to consider. Once lowered from the wall, the canvas was too big to move off the stage and directly to the floor, so rows of auditorium seats were dismantled and stored in the hallway to make room for the temporary work area needed to prepare the work for transport. One question was ever present as they came closer to their goal. Were the missing 2 feet of canvas from the original mural still intact behind the framing?
The biggest, most wonderful surprise was after getting the work off the wall, we could finally see that the full composition was there, that the work had not been cut down to fit the new space where it was installed. And that was really exciting. We wanted to be able to preserve and do the conservation treatment on the entire work.
Periodically, workmen from the university completed whatever tasks were needed to keep the auditorium maintained. As they painted the backstage areas surrounding the canvas, they would crush out their cigarette butts and push them through one of the holes in the work. When the conservators removed the staples from the stretchers and carefully unfolded back the edges of the painting, there, preserved like some archaeological treasure, were the same old cigarette butts. They marveled that not once had the mural accidentally been set on fire. Because the stretched canvas was too large to fit through the doors, a custom wood lath tube had been constructed and brought to the site, where it was specially padded to hold the work as it moved to its next location. With painstaking precision, they slowly wound and wrapped the canvas, carefully preserving the surface of the paint. Several months prior to the move, Dr. Caldwell, Bruce Katzeff, and an art-savvy state senator had collaborated to find the funds to acquire, conserve, and bring back to Bucks County the famous lost mural.
Another event that I recall has to do with Senator Lewis and his willingness to fund it. Perhaps a year earlier, one evening here at the museum, Senator Lewis and his wife, Diane Semmingson, were here for a social event at the museum, and I had the opportunity to walk around the facility with the senator, and we talked in general about the museum and its future. And at that meeting, the senator said to me that he wanted to do something important for the museum. He wanted to do something that would really be significant to the community. And we talked about the possibility of acquiring an important work of art. A year and a half later, when the mural started to surface, I said to myself, I recalled that evening with Senator Lewis and thought to myself, this is the right piece for him. So then putting together with the senator this concept of let's find the resources to do this one was an opportunity to put together that evening stroll through the galleries, the visit to Mount Alto, and my own personal commitment to I'm going to see if I can't make this happen.
And we didn't want to send it to auction and see what would happen on the open market. And we really wanted to do something that would perpetuate its sense of belonging to the campus. And so negotiating with the museum to have a scholarship in return for the picture seemed like a very happy meeting of both of our goals.
As the development officer for the Penn State Mount Alto campus, I have had an opportunity to work with a lot of different constituencies. And certainly I've worked with donors who have given us larger gifts than this. But I think this is the project that I really feel best about because I have learned so much about it. I've been in on it from the very beginning. I felt one way at the beginning of the project and came around to feel completely differently now that we are at this point when the mural is actually leaving the campus.
I think actually the day that I got really excited about it was when I visited the museum and I saw the wall, Bruce showed us where it was going to go, and I visited Dana, who is Daniel Garber's granddaughter, and we saw the other Garber works and we realized what we had, which we truly didn't know before. And I had already become aware that it was much more than I thought, and then when I saw what Garber's works really looked like and the potential for this one looking like them, it had really not been done justice where it was. And I'm really keen to see it all cleaned up and restored and in its proper place. Even you can see even from the little bits that have been uncovered now how much better it's going to look.
Initial research included finding a treatment location where the conservation work could take place. A studio or warehouse facility was needed that was climate controlled with an oversized door that would accommodate the full-sized canvas. The mural was restretched to its original 11 by 22 feet and in the future would be moved back to the museum intact.
So it was a fairly straightforward cleaning, considering the size of it, and not as complicated as we thought it would be. But we did find that a lot of the colors were sensitive and could be cleaned only very gingerly and only with water. And sometimes we had to resort to mineral spirits, which are actually less polar and less abrasive to the paint. And some of the reasons, I think, we were trying to wonder why the paint was so sensitive, because it's really not that old a painting. And we found that in some areas it was chalky to the point of looking like a pastel. And we thought that Garber may have spread the paint a little further than he would have on an easel painting because of the expense. He may have diluted it a little more with paint thinner than he would have on an easel painting. And so it was a little bit underbound. It didn't have as much oil in it to hold the pigment together.
In addition to mending tears and holes, we had to go about with moisture and blotters and weights, trying to take all the creases out and some dents that were in the canvas. There was a lot of very disfiguring creases due to the fact that the painting had been folded around its stretcher to fit into the Montalto auditorium, so we had to take care of those. And of course, flatten the tacking edges. Once the painting was reasonably flat, we then attached, if you can see here, this white polyester material, which was attached to the painting about this far in, again with a reversible adhesive. And then the painting was mounted onto this temporary strainer. The temporary strainer allowed us to pick the painting up and mount it onto the wall.
It was decided that a thin layer of varnish, which would stay clear for 200 years, would be applied to the painting. This light coat would provide an isolating layer on which the conservators could apply the film and patches to mend the tears, holes, and creases on the canvas in preparation for the in-painting. Colors were dispersed in the same kind of acrylic as the varnish. Work was done with very small brushes, and only in the areas where paint was missing or where marks remained from the Montalto installation. Ironically, Garber had painted the mural in a mere 6 weeks. Its conservation would take the better part of 6 months.
The painting up. You have to talk to us.
There were so many factors to consider in transporting the mural back to the museum. If it were packed in a solid crate, it would take a crane to move it. It traveled instead in a crate with plastic sides and wooden supports that would protect the work in transit. Fortunately, the museum had a 14-foot door that would accommodate both the fully stretched canvas and its protective covering. The goal was to back a dropped-bed tractor-trailer right up to the door. The driver visited the site to inspect the grassy slope that might need building up with gravel. Packed for shipping, the mural was as large and unwieldy as a small cottage. Weather became a critical factor. It couldn't be rainy or windy.
So it was an ideal day to move it. The truck could get right to the door, so we only had to get it off the truck, get it positioned for movement through the door, right in through the door, and the actual final location was right through that door in the Putnam Smith Gallery. So it couldn't have been a better location, a better experience. But basically, when you're moving something that size, you have to almost think about moving a small house or the side of a house. It's the size of a small cottage, 11 by 22 feet packed.
Garber's mural arrived several months before the unveiling ceremonies were to take place. A temporary wall was constructed so that it could be stored upright in its traveling frame until the fall when the museum was ready to exhibit it. Charles Froome, a designer who was experienced with large architectural installations, was contacted and plans were drawn up. The mural would become the keystone of the museum's permanent collection, occupying one full wall of the Putnam Smith Gallery. All the pieces of this complex puzzle were coming together in harmony.
There were a lot of really gratifying parts to the whole process of the move and the conservation treatment of the mural. I think the teamwork, the support that I had from the conservation staff and the art handlers and the outside vendors that we used was amazing. And the staff at Montalto couldn't have been more helpful, from supplying vacuums and irons. I mean, everyone wanted this project to succeed. So that was really almost magical.
We were working with people who first of all, yes, were professionals and knew what they were doing, but the spirit was there to do the very best thing for the painting. and that it was in good hands and that we were going to make it happen somehow, and we did.
You know, what's so wonderful about a project like this is that everybody who's involved in the project is delighted for the opportunity. And you know that the work that you're doing is of value when everybody feels that way. The folks that are involved in the conservation, and the people who do the public relations, and the folks who do the moving. Everybody is proud of having had an opportunity to be involved in the project. And that, I think, is perhaps the best statement of the fact that the project itself is of merit.
As a student, Garber had sought mural experience and even wrote to Will H. Lowe, a well-known American muralist, to obtain an apprenticeship. According to Lowe's reply, Garber lacked sufficient instinct for decoration. However, by the time of his mural commission, Garber had honed a decorative instinct as well as an impressionist approach. His strong sense of composition and surface design find roots in his travel fellowship in Europe, which exposed him to the great mural cycles in England, Italy, and France. Garber emphasized surface pattern, treated space in terms of a few simple zones, and employed soft pastel colors, not merely in this mural, but in his easel paintings as well. A wooded watershed idealizes a beautiful landscape scene. With its curtain of trees in the foreground and the shimmering light reflected on the hills in the distance, the mural well fit its setting, the natural resources exhibit of the Pennsylvania building. After Katzif's visit, Penn State's Mont Alto campus agreed to transfer the painting to the Michener Art Museum in return for a scholarship endowment in Daniel Garber's name, assuring that his legacy would continue there though his canvas was removed. Meticulously cleaned and restored to its original brilliance, the canvas can be seen in its entirety for the first time since the sesquicentennial, with the sides that had been folded back for so many years again in full view. What the campus lost as a piece of history, all visitors to the museum have access to. Garber's mural, a testament to Bucks County and this outstanding artist.